to make sure that we include them in our future evaluation. So we definitely will take that recommendation forward.
Thank you, Amy. And just one last comment. There was some discussion by COAB members in the community about the labels. You know, there is a rating system in our compliance reports from non-compliant to partial compliant, etc. And there was some sense among some folks that some of our ratings were too generous that in giving them partial compliance. I do want to comment on that. We didn't, the reasoning behind it was not fully elaborated, but we did, I wanted to just be clear that when we give partial compliance, that to the city, to the police bureau, that, you know, that in no way suggests that the police bureau is anywhere near completing that task or that requirement to the settlement agreement. Sometimes they're further along than others, but we want to acknowledge effort. I mean, to say that there was nothing done is discouraging to a lot of hardworking folks that have put time in, that we've tried to document in the report, which is, 80-some pages long. But again, you should not be concerned that it's like beginning to run the marathon. It doesn't mean you've completed the task at all. It means you started running. And I think there's a lot of work yet to be done. And so we want to be clear that partial compliance isn't anywhere near full compliance. And but we do want to acknowledge that the city and the PPB have been working on some of these things. In areas where we don't think they have, we've called them out. And in other areas we don't have enough information, we've said it's too early for us to make an assessment. So we want to thank you again for all that input and the help that this was a joint effort by everybody here, and comments and feedback from everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from COAB members?
Did you change any of the ratings where
So how you doing, Jackson?
the ratings were too generous? Did you go back
All right.
and change any of them?
No, we did not. Those were partial compliance, as I recall, and we left them at that rather than retract what we had said over the last two reports where we felt the city, the police bureau had done something. Yeah.
One thing that would be helpful, because the recommendation that we received was just to look at them and change them. We weren't quite sure what the issue was that the subcommittee was looking at. So, we did re-review them and felt comfortable with our partial compliance rating based on our definition of partial compliance. But it would be useful to have some additional information if there is an issue that the COAB subcommittee is seeing with that.
Reed, did I see your hand?
This is probably off topic, but I'm okay with being on topic. A while back, the NHCRS, I can do all of them, had recommended that the people in crisis, movement on this, be transported via ambulance. And I had brought up during the meeting, because I don't have all the time in the meeting, to go to every subcommittee meeting. But I had brought up in a meeting to have cameras installed in the ambulances, operable, obviously. But the assumptions being what they are, I guess I should be clear about them being operable. Is that something that surfaced as a recommendation? I don't know who I should be talking to, but I just kind of want to be abreast. Please apprise me.
I don't know, seeing that as a recommendation out of any subcommittee meeting.
So maybe that's something. Okay, my schedule's going to be clear for the next 10 days.
Anybody else on the COAB? Yes, Lou.
I just wanted to ask, when it comes to ratings, when you say partial compliance, and you're reviewing that, but if they've done nothing, if you'll put down that they've done nothing, but how do you measure that? If they don't do anything, and then the next step is they they've done a little bit that then is more than nothing, and you assume that's partial compliance. I'm wondering how the measurement, the metrics for the rating of partial compliance.
And is that even codifiable?
Well, these ratings certainly are judgment calls. I mean, they are subjective to some extent, but they are based on the data that we've collected or on different aspects of the agreement. And so, again, we'd have to be specific. I think there was one that had to do with meetings to be held between the police bureau and the COAB. And we had originally given partial compliance because there was effort made to work together to, and in the end, you know, one of the meetings, well, there's various reasons the meetings didn't happen.
There they all go.
But the article. A lot of work ahead with community engagement. There have been issues in the police bureau about community engagement, but I think that those meetings, I'm trying to remember
Hey, Joe.
And that stupid attorney doesn't know what the hell they're talking about.
Joe, I'm proud of you, right? And I would have been right after you got arrested and they left. I would have been the next one.
They didn't know what to do. They were fucked up, man. They are so paranoid. All they got to do is they are going to meet with us. So that's not me. You guys.
Okay.
I got to get tomorrow.
Can you speak to those, Ime is participating via a remote, and she is a COAB member. Can you speak to those places where partial compliance was given for items where no data was available for review?
I think, I mean, it depends on the specific item, but oftentimes there might not have been specific numbers available for review, but we certainly had conversations, we looked at documents, so there wasn't necessarily no data at all, but no, there might not be specific numbers or statistics that we could look at, but that doesn't mean that we weren't talking to people and gathering information in other ways.
Sure.
So I don't know if this is the place to ask this question, but isn't it possible that we do have a gradation of compliance so that there's some more rational allocation of, you know, as partially just like you're one tiny incy-weensy inch over the line versus substantial. And I know from a legal standpoint, there's descriptors that, you know, significant versus substantial, et cetera. In medicine, we have measurement and quantifiable criteria for a lot of things that are subjective, like a pain scale, et cetera. So it seems like that shouldn't be too difficult to do. It might be helpful to clarify.
Well, it's a little bit different than medicine here because there's a lot of, yeah, it is social science. And we do have quantification. One of our emphases, I have to say, has been creating new metrics within the police bureau, outside the police bureau, to measure lots of things. And so we are working on that, but generally, I think you're right. I mean, I do appreciate the difference. There are some recommendations that are just, they barely partially comply versus they comply quite a bit. There is substantial compliance, which is the next category up, which we're very reluctant to give it. But so, I mean, in the absence of quantification, what is there is a qualitative description of what actually happened and didn't happen. And what activities the way it's structured is we also say what needs to be done in order to move this to the next level. So it's not just we came up with something. I mean, there's actual things discussed in there. I mean, some are weaker than others, so we admit.
I think there's probably some kind of communication issue here, because you got feedback from a variety of sources, that said, why are you using partial compliance for this specific item? And some of those items, I recall, said, we didn't assess this yet, or nothing was done. And it's hard to believe that those items should get a partial compliance. Now, what I hear you saying tonight is something a little different. Well, we tried to do this, we tried to arrange the meetings, and it didn't happen because of this or that. But that wasn't fleshed out in the document, so the readers, and there were multiple readers who gave you the same feedback, said, why are you giving partial compliance when nothing is being done or nothing is happening? So I think to prevent that from happening again, because I certainly don't want to spend my time reading this very closely and say, oh, where did they come up with partial compliance when they said they didn't do anything? If you could make it clearer to the reader, maybe that would help.
In all fairness, so let me, given that this discussion is continuing, let me be clear that in many places, so first of all, the areas in the report of, hundreds of paragraphs here, there may be one or two where I would argue there should be any debate about whether it should be partial compliance.
They wouldn't arrest Joe
And secondly, we did in fact go back and try to justify what we did, but we're asking those who continue to feel that it was unjust to provide some reasoning for your argument. We got no reasons, we just said we don't believe it's partial compliance. Well, just to the same extent that we had to justify our rating, we asked you to justify yours.
I have another question here from email. Follow up. The report says no material available in multiple places. So if there was data of any kind, why is this not listed in the report?